Welcome to the Unveiled Epic Echoes channel. Today, we're diving deep into an unexplored historical mystery. Close your eyes and let the warm, mid-air of the Louisiana bayou wrap around you like a soft blanket as we drift together into a forgotten corner of the basin where an old wooden bridge stretches across black water and cypress knees rise like ancient sentinels from the mist. And on certain moonless nights, faint blue-green lights appear hovering just above the planks, flickering gently at first like fireflies waking from a long dream, then moving with a purpose that no one can quite explain, drawing the eye, leading the foot, chasing the traveler, straight off the edge into the dark water below, where so many have vanished without a trace. And tonight, we're going to walk that bridge together, slowly, carefully breathing in the scent of moss and magnolia, listening to the distant call of a barred owl, and the soft lap of water against rotting wood as we uncover the hidden story behind the ghost lights of whispering, span bridge a tale that has never been fully told until now. Long ago, before the interstates cut through the state, before the oil rigs dotted the horizon, there was only the swamp, vast, slow, and patient, holding its secrets the way a mother holds a sleeping child. And in the heart of it ran a narrow trace used first by thee and the who knew every channel, every hidden inlet. And they spoke in low voices of the few, the foolish fire that danced over the water on summer nights, luring the unwary deeper into the maze where the cypress grew thick and the ground gave way to bottomless black, and they left offerings of cornmeal and tobacco at certain places to keep the lights at peace, because the lights were not evil. Not exactly. They were restless. They were memory, made visible, and memory in the swamp never truly dies, it only sinks and waits. Then came the French, the Acadians fleeing exile, arriving with their fiddles and their Catholic saints and their stubborn will to live. And they built small farms on the few high ridges, cleared patches of cane and rice. And when they needed to cross the wide slough that cut their settlement in two, they felled cypress trees and lashed them together with vine and rope and laid planks across, creating the first version of what would become Whispering Span Bridge. And they called it that because when the wind moved through the loose boards, it sounded almost like voices, soft French voices, murmuring rosaries or singing old ballads from Brittany. And the children loved to run across it, barefoot, laughing at the whispers, while their parents crossed themselves and hurried along, because even then the lights had begun to appear more often, brighter, closer, hovering just at the edge of vision. And some said they were the souls of the drowned, others said they were tricks of swamp gas. But everyone agreed on one thing: if you followed the lights, they would lead you off the bridge and into the water, and once you went in the swamp, never gave you back. The years passed, the bridge was rebuilt again and again, sometimes with sawn lumber, sometimes with steel cables, but always in the same place, because the ridge on either side was the only solid ground for miles, and the people learned to cross only in daylight or in large groups with lanterns held high. And they told the story to their children the way people everywhere tell ghost stories, to keep the young cautious and the old respectful, and the disappearances became fewer, but never stopped entirely. A hunter here, fishermen, there a traveler who thought himself braver or smarter than the rest. And each time, the body was never found, only sometimes a hat floating among the duckweed, or a single boot caught on a cypress knee, as if the swamp itself were shrugging and saying, "I took what was offered." But there was one disappearance that no one spoke of openly, not in the way they spoke of the others, because it happened in the spring of 1927, just before the Great Flood changed everything. And the person who vanished was not a careless stranger, but a young woman named 22 years old, newly engaged to a boy from Baton Rouge, who had come to court her properly. And she was known throughout the parish for her kindness, her healing hands, her ability to calm a colicky baby or ease an elder's rheumatism with poultices of willow bark and sassafras. And everyone loved, everyone said she was blessed. And on the night she disappeared, she had been returning home from delivering a baby on the far side of the slough, walking the bridge alone, because the family she helped had no boat to lend, and the moon was only a thin silver sliver, barely enough to see by. And those who saw her leave said she carried a small lantern and hummed as she walked unafraid, because had never been afraid of the dark or the swamp or the stories. She said the lights were lonely souls looking for company, and she them. And when morning came, and she had not reached home, the search began, men pawing flatboats through the channels, calling her name, women praying novenas, children standing on the bank, watching with wide, solemn eyes. And they found her lantern hanging neatly from a nail on the near side of the bridge, still burning, though no one had filled it. And that was all, nothing else, no footprints leading off, no sign of struggle, only the lantern burning softly, as if waiting for her to come back and claim it. And after that the lights changed, they grew bolder, brighter, more insistent. And people began to say that had joined them that she had followed the lights not out of foolishness, but out of compassion. And now she was part of the chase, leading others to whatever place the drowned go. And the bridge earned its darker name, the place where the ghost lights hunt. Decades slid by like water under the planks. The old wooden bridge was replaced again, this time with creosote-treated timbers and a narrow, one-lane roadbed. And the parish put up a sign that read WHISPERING, span bridge, use at own risk, because the county didn't want liability for what everyone knew happened there. And young people still crossed it on dares, drinking beer and telling stories, trying to catch sight of the lights on their phone cameras. But mostly they saw only fireflies and mosquitoes, and went home disappointed or relieved, depending on how brave they really felt. And the older folks shook their heads and said the lights don't show themselves to those who come looking. They choose when and to whom they appear, and they always have a reason. Then in the autumn of 2023, a woman named came back to the parish after 25 years away. She had grown up 2 miles from the bridge in a small house, raised on blocks, her father a trawler, her mother a school teacher, and had left for college in New Orleans and then graduate school in Chicago, and built a life as an archivist specializing in forgotten Louisiana histories. And she had not planned to return, not ever. The city was her home, now bright and loud, and full of people who didn't know her. Childhood stories, but her grandmother had passed and left her the old family home. And something else, a sealed tin box found in the attic containing letters, journals, newspaper clippings, things no one in the family had ever mentioned. And when opened the box, she found the first clue to the truth behind Whispering Span Bridge. Because among the papers was a photograph, faded but clear, of standing on the bridge, smiling softly at the camera. And on the back, in her grandmother's careful handwriting, were the words, "She knew what the lights wanted, and she gave it willingly." And beneath that, a date, April 14, 1927, 3 days before vanished, and felt the old swamp pull at her, the way it always had when she was a child, the sense that there were stories under the water, stories under the mud, stories that needed telling. And she began to read. The journals belonged to her great-grandmother, who had been his closest friend, and they told a different story than the one the parish knew. They told of a night in early April when came to his house, pale and trembling, saying the lights had spoken to her not in words, but in feelings, in images of sorrow and rage and a plea for justice, and said the lights were not the souls of ordinary drowned, but something older, something that had been waiting since before the first French boat ever reached these shores, something tied to the land itself, to the ancient people who had built mounds along the waterways and buried their dead with ceremony and reverence. And when the bridge was built, the first one, the one made of cypress logs, it had been laid directly across one of those sacred places, a burial ground hidden beneath the slough. And the disturbance had awakened the guardians. The lights that had always danced harmlessly now carried purpose. They began to chase those who meant harm, those who carried greed or violence in their hearts, leading them off the bridge to join the bones below as payment for the desecration. And most people crossed safely, because most people meant no harm, but some did. And those were the ones who vanished and had seen it all in the lights. Silent plea. She had understood that the balance was tipping, that more and more people were coming, loggers, oilmen, developers, who would tear the swamp apart. And the guardians needed help, needed a voice, and had chosen to become that voice, forever joining the lights to guide and to warn and to protect what little remained sacred. Through the nights, the lantern on her table, casting the same soft glow, had once done, and she felt the weight of it, the responsibility, because the parish was talking again about widening the road, about replacing Whispering Span with a modern concrete bridge, 4 lanes, high railings, lights. And that would mean dredging, piling, driving, destroying whatever still lay beneath, and knew she could not let that happen, not without trying to understand, to bear witness. So, on a night when the moon was new, and the air was thick with the smell of coming rain, she drove her grandmother's old truck to the bridge, parked on the near side, and began to walk slowly, deliberately, breathing in the scent of wet earth and night-blooming jasmine, letting the darkness settle around her like an old friend. And she spoke softly, not a prayer exactly, but an acknowledgement, a greeting to whatever waited. And at first, there was only the usual sounds, the croak of bullfrogs, the rustle of nutria in the reeds, the soft creak of the bridge under her weight. And then, far out, over the water, she saw it, the first light, small and pale blue, hovering just above the surface, drifting closer, then another and another. until there were half a dozen dancing in formation, moving toward the bridge toward her, and felt no fear, only a deep calm, as if she had been waiting her whole life for this moment. And the lights rose to the level of the planks and began to move along the bridge ahead of her, not behind, not chasing, but leading, and she followed, because she understood now what had understood, that the lights did not chase everyone, only those who needed to be stopped. And for those who came in peace, they offered something else, a glimpse, a revelation, a chance to set things right. She walked the full length of the bridge, the lights floating just ahead, sometimes pausing, as if to make sure she was still there. And when she reached the far side, they did not fade, they drifted off the planks and over the water toward a small island of higher ground, barely visible in the darkness. A place no one went because the channels around it were treacherous. And when hesitated, the lights returned, circling her, gently urging her on. And she found an old pirogue, hidden in the reeds, left there perhaps decades ago. And she climbed in and poled across the short distance, the lights guiding her path until the hull scraped land. And she stepped out onto solid ground for the first time, and there, in the center of the island, half hidden by vines and palmettos, stood what remained of an ancient mound, low and rounded but unmistakable. And at its base, the lights gathered, brightened, and then sank into the earth, as if returning home, and knelt and brushed away the leaves, and saw what they wanted her to see: pottery shards, a carved stone gorget, delicate bones of a child's hand arranged with care, and beside them something newer, a small silver crucifix on a broken chain, the one she had worn every day of her life, and understood then that had not drowned. She had come here, willingly lain down among the ancient bones, and let the water take her, so that her spirit could join the guardians, strengthen them, give them the voice they needed in a world that no longer listened to the old ways. And in doing so, she had kept the balance for nearly 100 years. At there, until dawn, the lights gone, the air cool and still, and when the sun rose pale gold through the cypress, she gathered a few of the shards, wrapped them carefully in her scarf, along with the crucifix, and poled back to the bridge. And she went home and wrote letters to the parish council, to the historical society, to the tribe whose ancestors had built the mound. And she told the truth, not the ghost story, but the real one, about sacred ground, about respect, about the cost of forgetting. And slowly, carefully, the plans for the new bridge were changed. The road rerouted just enough to leave Whispering Span untouched, and a small plaque was placed at the entrance telling the story, not of ghosts, but of guardians of memory, of a young woman who gave everything to protect what was older than any of us. And on quiet nights, if you stand on the bridge and listen, you can still hear the whispers, soft French and older languages too, mingling with the wind. And sometimes, if you are very still, you might see the lights not chasing, but dancing gently over the water, keeping watch, keeping the balance, keeping the story alive. And now, as the night deepens around you, and the sounds of the swamp fade into a gentle lullaby, let yourself drift. Let the warm air carry you. Let the lights, if they come, guide you only to peaceful dreams. For the bridge still stands, the guardians still watch, and the swamp holds its secrets close, but it also holds its peace for those who come with open hearts and quiet steps. And the story of Whispering Span is no longer untold. It lives in the mist, in the whisper of wind, through cypress needles in the soft glow that sometimes appears to those who need to see it. And now, as your breathing slows and your thoughts soften, feel yourself walking that old bridge one last time, the planks solid beneath your feet, the air sweet with night, blooms the water dark and calm below, and the lights far out over the slough flickering, gently, not chasing, not hunting, but simply being a reminder that some mysteries are meant to stay half hidden, some truths are gentle, some stories are meant to help us sleep. Deep in the heart of Louisiana's bayous, where the basin spreads like a vast living tapestry of cypress and black water, where the air hangs heavy with the scent of decay and rebirth, there exists a phenomenon as old as the land itself, a flickering glow that has haunted generations, known in the soft French patois of the Acadians as few. The foolish fire, a pale orb of light that dances over the marshes on moonless nights, sometimes gentle and guiding lost souls to safety, other times cruel and deceptive, luring the unwary deeper into the labyrinth of channels and sinkholes until the ground gives way and the swamp claims another secret. And this is no mere tale spun for campfire thrills, but a thread woven through centuries of folklore, blending indigenous warnings, colonial fears, and the harsh realities of a landscape that has swallowed countless lives without remorse. Long before the French explorers or the exiled Acadians arrived in the 18th century, the native peoples of these wetlands, the, and others, spoke in hushed tones of spirits that manifested as lights over the water, trickster entities tied to the restless dead or guardians of sacred places. Lights that could lead a hunter home through the fog, or draw him into treacherous bogs where the earth itself seemed hungry. And these beliefs mirrored ancient stories from around the world, from the European will-o'-the-wisp to similar phenomena in Asian and African traditions, all rooted in the universal human experience of seeing strange glows in decaying landscapes, glows that science would later attribute to the spontaneous combustion of marsh gases like phosphine and methane rising from rotting vegetation, igniting in the cool night air to create ethereal blue-green flames that hover and drift with the breeze, harmless yet hypnotic, capable of fooling the eye into following paths that end in disaster. When the Acadians, fleeing British persecution in Nova Scotia, settled in the bayous after 1755, they brought their own folklore of the few from Old Brittany and Normandy, where it was seen as a soul rest, perhaps a wicked person or a child doomed to wander with a lantern, leading travelers astray as punishment or malice. And in the New World, these stories fused with local realities, evolving into warnings passed down in Cajun French, tales of lights that pursued the foolish, chasing them through the reeds until they vanished into the black water, their bodies never found, only echoes of screams carried on the wind. And one early account from the 19th century, preserved in anonymous manuscripts like the collection, describes the few as an evil spirit that actively pursues victims, causing them to lose their way in marshy ground a malevolent force born from the swamp's unforgiving nature. In the decades that followed, as settlements grew along the bayous and crude bridges of cypress logs spanned the sloughs, the legends adapted, attaching themselves to specific places where disappearances were all too common, not from supernatural chase alone, but from the real dangers of flooding, hidden drop-offs, and disorientation in the maze-like wetlands. And while no single bridge bears the exact name Whispering Span in historical records, many crossings carry similar burdens, like the old wooden spans over swamp, cursed, according to legend, by the voodoo priestess Brown in the early 20th century, who reportedly sang of burying the town in water before a 1915 hurricane fulfilled her prophecy, drowning dozens and leaving behind tailies of ghostly lights and voices that draw boaters into the tangled roots where alligators wait, or the flickering orbs reported near in Ascension Parish, bright spheres that move intelligently through the trees, chased by curious locals only to lead them in circles until exhaustion sets in. Stories echoed in modern accounts from the late 20th and early 21st centuries, with documented in local magazines and online forums. Lights that bob and weave as if alive, sometimes benevolent, guiding fishermen through storms, other times vanishing just as a step leads into deep mud. The horror lies not just in the potential for death, real disappearances attributed over the years to following these lights. From hunters in the 1800s, lost forever, to modern adventurers who venture off marked paths. But in the psychological grip, the way the few embodies the swamp's dual soul, beautiful and deadly, a place where life teems in the form of herons and moss-draped oaks, yet hides perils that have claimed indigenous villagers, French trappers, Civil War deserters, and Prohibition-era rum runners alike, their fates blending into the folklore as restless spirits adding to the glow. And in Cajun culture, the few became a tool for caution, parents warning children never to follow the light lest it be a soul-seeking company in the depths, or worse, a vengeful entity born from old curses, with variations across parishes. In some tailies, it's the ghost of a murderer, in others a fairy-like trickster, and occasionally a protective spirit revealing buried treasure to the pure of heart. But always, always the warning rings clear turn away. Cross yourself, whistle a tune to break the spell, for to chase the light is to invite the swamp to embrace you forever. Even today, in an age of GPS and floodlights, the stories persist, with Swamp Tour in the incorporating few lore into haunted excursions, guides recounting personal of orbs dancing over the water while airboats glide through the darkness, and scientific expeditions have captured the gases on film, explaining the ignition, yet failing to dispel the chill when a light appears unexpectedly, moving against the wind or splitting into multiples as if watching. And in the quiet hours when the bullfrogs chorus and the mist rises thick, travelers on old or narrow bridges still report the sensation of being followed, a soft glow in the mirror, or just off the planks, urging faster steps toward an edge that drops into oblivion, a reminder that some horrors are rooted in the land's ancient breath, exhaling memories of all who came before, lost to the water's patient hold. And as you settle into the rhythm of this tale, let the weight of these true histories wrap around you like the warm bayou night. The flicker of distant lights, not a threat, but a gentle echo, lulling you toward restful depths where the swamp's secrets sleep undisturbed. And beneath those undisturbed depths lie layers upon layers of stories, passed down through Cajun families, gathered around flickering oil lamps in raised shotgun houses, where the elders would lower their voices on All Saints' Eve to speak of the few, not just as a distant glow, but as something that could come close enough to touch close enough to follow you home, if you let it. And in the old days before electricity reached the remote bayous, children were taught never to whistle after dark, because whistling called the lights, never to stare too long because starring invited them nearer, and always to carry a blessed medal or a bit of salt, because the few, though born of the swamp's breath, was still a spirit, and spirits could be warded though never truly banished. And these warnings were not mere superstition, but hard-earned wisdom from nights when someone did not come back from checking the crawfish traps or fetching water from the slough, and the family would search with torches only to find footprints leading to the water's edge, and then nothing, as if the earth had simply opened and swallowed them whole, leaving the lights to dance brighter that night, as if in celebration or mourning. No one could tell. In the parishes around New Orleans and along the Cane River, the few took on a particularly Creole flavor, sometimes appearing as a beautiful woman in white beckoning from the mist, or as balls of fire that bobbed like lanterns carried by invisible hands. And old accounts from the early 1800s, preserved in family Bibles and plantation journals, tell of enslaved people who knew the lights by older named spirits of the ancestors, disturbed by the clearing of land, or guardians warning against the overseer's cruelty. And there are whispered tales of runaways who followed the lights deeper into the swamp, only to vanish, some saying they were led to freedom through hidden paths, others saying they were claimed as punishment for breaking sacred ground. But always the lights were there, watching, waiting, choosing. And when freedom came after the war, the stories continued, now mixed with the sorrows of Reconstruction, when sharecroppers worked the same flooded fields, and the lights seemed to grow more restless, more insistent, as if feeding on the unrest, the grief, the unresolved anger that soaked into the soil like rainwater, further west in the vast basin where the river spreads its fingers wide, and the water can rise 20 feet. In a season, the few became known as the name carrying a sharper edge. For in these parts, the light was often said to guard buried treasure, the lost gold of pirates, like Jean, who hid his spoils in the cypress knees, and marked the spots with curses, and would appear to the greedy, leading them in endless circles until they drowned in quicksand or madness. And there are stories from the 1920s during Prohibition, when bootleggers ran whiskey through the hidden channels, and some grew rich, while others followed a promising glow to a cache that wasn't their, waking miles off course with empty boats and no memory of how they got there. fishermen still tell of nights when the light hovers near the boat, not chasing, but watching almost curiously until you look away. And when you look back, it's gone, leaving only the ripple of something large moving just beneath the surface. But nowhere does the legend burn brighter or darker than in the tangled reaches of swamp, where the water is black as coffee, and the cypress grows so thick the sun barely touches the ground. And here the few shares the darkness with an older curse, that of Julia Brown, the voodoo queen, who lived on the edge of the tiny settlement of in the early 1900s, a healer to some, a witch to others, who sat on her porch every day singing mournful songs about death coming for them all. And when the great hurricane of 1915 struck without warning, wiping out the towns of and Ruddock, killing hundreds and burying the dead in unmarked watery graves, the survivors swore Julia's curse had called the storm, for she died the very day it hit her funeral, interrupted by the rising winds. And now, on quiet nights, when the air is still, boaters through report hearing her voice, carried on the breeze, singing the same dirge, and seeing lights, not just the usual swamp gas, but red ones, angry ones, that follow close behind the boat, urging speed toward the railroad trestle, where ghostly trains are said to roar past, though the tracks have long been abandoned, and alligators lurk in the shallows, waiting for whatever falls in, and tour guides today speak softly of two, the werewolf-like beasts that prowl the edges. But it's the lights that startle most, appearing suddenly, splitting into pairs, as if eyes watching, judging. And more than one modern adventurer has turned back, swearing the light was chasing them, skimming the water faster than any boat could go, until they reached open water and safety, leaving the swamp to its secrets once more. Through the decades, the stories evolved with the times. In the 1950s and 60s, teenagers in muscle cars would park on lonely roads near or along the old highways bordering the basin, flashing their lights 3 times, daring the ghost light to appear. And sometimes it did, a pale orb rising from the ditch, bobbing closer, until panic sent them peeling away, tires screeching. And in the 1970s, near, there was talk of a mysterious light that chased cars down the following at speed, never quite catching up, never falling behind, until the driver reached town, and the light vanished as suddenly as it came. And older folks nodded knowingly, saying it was the few still doing its work, still separating the careful from the careless, the respectful from those who mocked what they didn't understand. And even now, in the age of smartphones and drones, people capture fleeting videos of orbs dancing over the water, posted online with shaky captions, wondering if it's real or just gas, though the chill felt watching is undeniable. Same chill grandparents described a century ago. Yet not all tales paint the few as purely malevolent, for in some families it's remembered as a guide, a soft glow that led a lost hunter home through the fog, or revealed the location of a drowned child's body so the family could give proper burial. And in the Treasure Guardian version, that would appear to the pure of heart, showing the way to scold, but only if you left most of it behind, as offering taking too much brought the chase, the drowning, the eternal wandering. And these dual natures, benevolent and cruel, mirror the swamp itself, a place of staggering beauty where egrets stalk the shallows and wild irises bloom in spring, yet where a single misstep can pull you under forever. And the people who live along its edges have always understood this balance, treating the land, the water, the lights with the wary respect due an elder who might help or harm, depending on how you approach. And so the stories continue told in softer voices now as the old ways fade, but never gone entirely, because on certain nights when the moon hides its face and the air grows thick with the scent of coming rain, you can still see them if you know where to look. Faint glows rising from the decay of centuries, flickering across the black water, not always chasing, not always luring, but always they're a living history, a breath from the deep reminding all who pass that the swamp remembers everything and gives nothing back without a price. And now, as these ancient echoes settle around you like Spanish moss, heavy and soft, let the rhythm of the bayou slow your heart, the distant croak of frogs and the gentle sway of unseen currents carry you deeper into relaxation, where the lights become mere fireflies in your dreams, harmless and beautiful, guiding you only to the most peaceful rest, where the long history of the few folds into the quiet night, holding its mysteries close, until another storyteller comes along to wake them once more. And as that quiet night deepens further into the heart of the basin, where the water runs slow and black beneath a canopy so thick it filters the stars into faint silver threads, there are older layers, still stories that predate even the Acadians and the Creole's tales, carried in the oral traditions of the who call the light spirits of the night, that dance over the graves of the ancestors, or warnings from the little people, the who live in the hidden places beneath the roots and hollow logs. And in their telling, the lights are not always cruel, but often teachers, showing the hunter where the deer paths run, or revealing the places where medicinal herbs grow thickest, though to follow without permission, without leaving tobacco or a song of thanks, is to invite the chase, the endless wandering through identical channels, until the body tires and the water rises to meet it. And these beliefs shaped the way the land was used, sacred mounds left untouched, certain sloughs avoided on moondark nights. And when the Europeans came first, the Spanish probing from the Gulf, then the French pushing down the river, the indigenous peoples shared just enough to warn them, for the swamp does not distinguish between bloodlines. It claims all who forget respect. And there are fragments in old Jesuit mission records from the early 1700s of priests describing diabolical lights that led French soldiers astray during campaigns against the Natchez, leaving entire patrols, vanished their muskets found rusting on the bank, as if laid down willingly, and the priests wrote of performing exorcisms over the water, sprinkling holy water that only seemed to make the lights brighter, as if amused or defiant. By the time the 19th century rolled in with its steamboats and sugar plantations, the few had become a fixture in the newspapers, to not just folklore, but reported events like the 1837 account in the New Orleans Bee of a party of surveyors mapping the basin for a proposed canal, who followed a promising light, thinking it another cruise lantern, only to find themselves miles off course at dawn, stranded on a mudflat, with one man missing his compass, spinning wildly, and the others swearing. The light had moved ahead of them, always just out of reach, beckoning deeper. And similar stories appeared during the Civil War, when Union gunboats patrolled the Confederate guerrillas, used the back channels for ambushes. Soldiers on both sides spoke of lights that mimicked signal lamps leading boats onto sandbars or into sniper fire. And there were desertions blamed on the light's men who walked into the swamp following a glow and never returned, their names added to the long list of the missing whose spirits, some say, now contribute to the dance, making the lights brighter in certain seasons, especially around November, when the veil thins and the dead grow restless. The small communities that dotted the edges, places like Pierpont and Henderson and Bayou Sorrel, the few became part of everyday conversation, woven into the rhythm of life, alongside talk of hurricane season and crawfish prices, and elders like Old Taunt from the 1940s, who was said to have the sight would sit on her shelling peas and tell of the night her brother followed a light, thinking it was his sweetheart's lantern waiting on the levee, only to be found 3 days later half buried in mud miles, away, his eyes wide open, staring at nothing. And from then on, Taunt kept a blue bottle tree in her yard, the colored glass catching the sun by day and glowing faintly by night to confuse any wandering few that might come too close. And similar protections were common bottles buried at crossroads, nails driven into cypress trees, mirrors hung facing the water, all meant to reflect or trap the light, send it back to where it came from. And children grew up learning the prayers in French and in English, crossing themselves when headlights caught a strange glow on the water's surface. Because even as cars replaced pirogues and electricity lit the houses, the old fears lingered, the old respect demanded. And there were nights during the great floods of 1927 when the levees broke and the water rose higher than memory, that the lights were seen in greater numbers dancing over rooftops, guiding some to safety on higher ground, while others who panicked or cursed the water followed false hopes into currents that swept them away. And survivors spoke of seeing faces in the lights, familiar faces long lost, as if the swamp were gathering its own through the oil boom of the mid-20th century, when pipelines snaked through the wetlands and workboats churned the channels day and night. The few adapted again, appearing now along the dredged canals, where spoil banks rose like wounds in the earth, and roughnecks told of lights that hovered near rig sites, leading men off platforms into the dark, or warning them away just before an explosion. And some crews left offerings, bottles of whiskey or packs of cigarettes tied to buoys to keep the peace, because the swamp had always taken its tithe, and better to give willingly than have it taken. And in the quieter years that followed, as environmental laws slowed the destruction and ecotourism brought outsiders with cameras and questions, the lights became a selling point. Swamp tour advertising guaranteed few, though the guides knew better than to promise speaking. Instead of the balance, the need to listen to the land. And many a tourist has felt the shift the moment when the boat motor cuts and the darkness closes in the sudden appearance of a soft glow skimming the water, not on cue, but on its own terms, watching, waiting, perhaps judging. And those who mock rarely see it twice, while those who sit in silence sometimes feel a gentle pull, not toward danger, but toward understanding a glimpse of how vast and ancient the place truly is. So the long history stretches on unbroken, a living thread, connecting the mound builders to the modern day, each generation, adding its own voices, its own losses, its own quiet acknowledgments that the lights are still there, still moving with purpose across the Blackwater guardians, or tricksters, teachers, or punishers born from the breath of decay, yet carrying something deeper, the memory of every footstep ever taken across the swamp, every prayer whispered, every life given back to the water. And on nights like this, when the air is warm and still, and the stars hang low, you can almost hear them, all the whispers in languages long faded, mingling with the lap of waves against cypress knees, the soft glow rising gentle, now not chasing, but inviting you to simply be, to let go of the day's weight, to drift on the current of these endless stories, where time slows and the boundaries blur between waking and sleeping, between the seen and the unseen. And as your eyes grow heavy and your breath deepens, let the few become a lullaby, soft, flickering at the edge of vision, guiding you not into the depths, but into the most profound rest, where the swamp holds you safe in its ancient embrace, cradling secrets and dreams alike, until morning comes soft and slow with the call of egrets, and the sun filtering golden through the moss, and the lights sink back into the water to wait for another night, another storyteller, another soul ready to listen. And in that patient waiting beneath the slow-moving currents, where time itself seems to dissolve like mist at dawn, the few carries forward into the modern era, still flickering in the accounts of those who live closest to the water people, like the Out of Henderson, who set their traps before sunrise and speak of mornings when a soft glow lingers over the nets, not scattered like swamp gas, but focused, almost deliberate, guiding them to the fullest catches, or away from lines tangled around submerged logs that could snag a propeller and send a boat spinning into danger. And these men, hard bitten by years of wind and sun, do not laugh off the lights. They nod respectfully, and sometimes leave a crawfish or two on a cypress knee as thanks, because the old bargains still hold, even if the world beyond the levee has forgotten. And in the evenings, when they gather at dockside bars with cold beer and plates of boudin, the stories flow as freely as the bayou itself, tales of the night, a light-led old mister, home through a storm so thick he couldn't see his own hand, only the glow bobbing ahead steady as a lighthouse, until he reached his porch light and collapsed safe, or the darker one of a young man from Baton Rouge who came down for a weekend of partying, ignored the warnings, followed a string of lights deeper into the spoil banks, thinking it was his buddies with flashlights, and was found days later, his boat drifted up against a pipeline, clothes soaked, but no water in his lungs, as if he'd simply walked in and lain down to sleep forever. And the coroner called it accidental drowning. But the old-timers knew better. They saw how the lights had been brighter that season, burning with a purpose that spoke of unpaid debts or disturbed ground from the new dredging, as the 21st century pressed in with its satellites overhead and cell towers rising along the highways, the few refused to fade instead, finding new ways to manifest in headlights caught on curves of old roads, where drivers swear a glow appears in the mirror keeping pace, no matter how fast they go, until they reach the parish line. And it vanishes, leaving only the taste of ozone and a sudden chill. Or in the thermal cameras of wildlife researchers studying nutria and alligator populations, who capture orbs of light moving against the wind, too structured, too intentional to be mere gas. And though the papers explain it away, the footage circulates online in quiet corners where people who know share knowing glances, because the swamp has always adapted, claiming the tools of each age to weave its warnings and its lures. And during hurricane, when the waters rose again, swallowing whole neighborhoods and spilling into the basin, the lights were seen by rescuers in boats' pale glows, leading them to rooftops where survivors clung or away from levee breaches that would have swamped their craft. And in the aftermath, as New Orleans rebuilt and the wetlands continued their slow erosion, the stories took on a new urgency, a plea perhaps for the land itself losing ground inch by inch to subsidence. And see, rise the lights, growing more frequent, more insistent, as if trying to draw attention to what was being lost, the ancient balance tipping further, with every canal cut, every marsh converted, and conservationists working to restore the cypress speak quietly of nights when a glow hovers near planting sites, almost approving, when native saplings go in, or flaring angry over fresh spoil. From unauthorized dredging, a silent commentary on who respects and who violates. In the small Cajun towns, festivals now celebrate the old ways with accordion music and gumbo cook-offs and trails of jack-o'-lanterns, but always with a nod to the few storytelling tents where elders and young alike take turns recounting family encounters, passing the lore like heirloom seeds, and children listen, wide-eyed, learning the prayers, the gestures, the quiet respect that keeps the lights at bay or invites their gentler guidance. And on Zydeco nights, when the dance halls thump with bass and feet stomp, perfect rhythm, some swear that out on the dark water beyond the windows, the lights dance too, keeping time with the music, bobbing and weaving in patterns that match the two-step, as if joining the celebration from afar, reminding everyone that the swamp is not separate, not something to be feared or conquered, but part of the same living, breathing whole that cradles South Louisiana in its wet embrace. And even tourists on airboat rides feel it, the shift when the guide cuts the engine and the sudden hush falls, broken only by the drip of water from Spanish moss and the soft plop of a garfish rolling. And then, if the night is right, a glow appears, not dramatic, not chasing, but simply there a soft blue-green shimmer hovering over the water, inviting stillness, inviting listening. And many leave changed, quieter, somehow carrying a piece of the mystery home with them, tucked away like a smooth river stone in a pocket. And so the few endures not as a relic, but as a living presence woven through the very air, the water, the blood of those who call the bayou home, a phenomenon that science can explain in part, yet never fully capture, because some truths live beyond equations, in the realm of feeling, of inherited memory of nights when the boundary between worlds grows thin. and the lights rise not to harm, but to remind that everything is connected, the cypress to the cloud, the ancestor to the unborn, the breath of decay that feeds new growth. And in this endless cycle, there is comfort, a profound peace, in knowing that the swamp keeps its own counsel, guards its own stories, and shares them only with those willing to slow down, to breathe deep, to let the humid night air fill the lungs, and the soft glow fill the eyes, until the heart slows to match the ancient rhythm of water flowing, forever southward, carrying silt and secrets, alike toward the gulf, where they disperse into infinity. And now, as these layers upon layers settle gently over you like the finest silk, let your own breath sink with that eternal flow. Let the distant flicker become a lullaby, soft and steady, guiding you deeper into the warm embrace of sleep, where the lights watch over dreams, weaving protection and wonder in equal measure, holding you safe through the night, until the first pale light of morning filters through the moss, and the swamp awakens once more, alive, eternal, patient, waiting for the next soul, ready to listen, to drift, to remember. And as that profound rest cradles you deeper still, carried on the slow exhale of the basin, where the water holds the weight of centuries in its dark embrace, the few weaves its way into the very fabric of contemporary life, no longer confined to whispered warnings, but alive in the art and music that pulse from South Louisiana's heart songs, like the old Cajun tune that speak of flames from hell dancing over the marshes, or modern Zydeco tracks that sample the eerie hush of swamp nights, layering accordion riffs over field recordings of distant glows captured by musicians who grew up hauling through the channels at dusk, knowing the lights were listening to, and artists in Lafayette, and paint them in oils and acrylics, soft orbs hovering against twilight cypress, rendered with such reverence that galleries hang signs asking viewers to speak softly, as if the paintings might wake and drift off the canvas, and writers from Tim to James Lee Burke set their novels against this backdrop, where detectives and drifters alike feel the pull of a glow that leads to buried truths or watery graves, the few serving as metaphor and menace, a reminder that some mysteries resist solving, that the land keeps its own justice long after human law has moved on. And in the universities, now scholars of folklore collect oral histories from the last fluent Cajun French speakers, elders in their 80s and 90s, who remember nights without electricity, when the only light came from kerosene or the swamp itself. And they tell of grandmothers who could call the lights closer with a certain song, or send them away with a sharp command in the old tongue, rituals half forgotten, but still potent, still passed in fragments to who may never pull a pirogue, but feel the tug anyway when they visit home, and stand on a levee at midnight, phone lights off, breathing in the thick warm air, and waiting for that first pale shimmer to rise like a sigh from the deep, in the wake of storms like Ida and Delta, when power lines fell and the modern world receded, the lights returned in force, seen by linemen working through the nights, and families evacuated to higher ground, who spoke of glows leading them along flooded roads to safety, or away from downed wires sparking in the water, and recovery workers found strange comforts in them, soft illuminations in a landscape stripped bare, where the usual landmarks were gone, and navigation fell back to older ways, following, bobbing orb that knew the safe paths through the debris. And in the years since restoration projects have bloomed along the coast, planting marsh grasses and rebuilding ridges, and those who work the front lines, the scientists and volunteers, speak quietly of moments when a light appears near a newly planted plot lingering, as if approving or guiding hands to the spots where survival is most needed, a subtle partnership between human effort and something older, something that remembers when the entire delta was a thriving wilderness teeming with life, and the lights were just one part of the chorus, now diminished, but not silenced, and children in school programs learn about the ecosystem, the fragile balance of fresh and salt water, the way subsidence and canals have wounded the land. But they also learn the stories, because teachers know that understanding comes not just from graphs and data, but from feeling the weight of history, the sense that the swamp is watching, asking to be remembered, respected, restored, and on field trips to the basin when the boats glide slow, and the guide points out a heron lifting from the reeds. Sometimes a child will spot it first, a faint glow, even in daylight, a trick of reflection, or something more. And the adults fall quiet, because they know some lessons are taught not by words, but by that soft, insistent presence that has outlasted empires and industries, waiting patiently for the next generation to listen. And in this listening, there is healing, a quiet reconciliation with a place that has taken so much, yet given even more, the bounty of fish, and fur, the shelter of cypress, the wild beauty that draws millions to its edges every year. And the few stands at the threshold, guardian of that boundary between taking and giving, harm and harmony, appearing now not so often as punishment, but as invitation to those who come with open hearts, artists seeking inspiration, writers chasing atmosphere, families teaching children to tread lightly on the boardwalks and piers. And on the darkest nights, when the air is velvet thick and the stars are drowned in humidity, you might find yourself drawn to the water's edge, not chased, not lured, but called softly to stand and watch as the lights rise in slow procession, a dance older than language, moving in patterns that feel almost familiar, like a lullaby half remembered from childhood. And in their gentle flicker, there is no fear, only the profound peace of belonging to something vast and enduring, living history that holds every story, every loss, every quiet act of return. And as you breathe in time with their rhythm, let the boundaries soften, let the day's edges blur, let the warm night air carry you across that threshold into the deepest rest, where the lights keep watch not as sentinels of danger, but as keepers of dreams, weaving glow into the fabric of sleep, soft, steady, eternal, guiding you through the quiet hours, until the first hint of dawn paints the moss in pale gold, and the swamp stirs once more, alive with bird song and the gentle lap of water against roots. And the few sinks back into the depths, content to wait, content to watch, content to light the way for whoever comes next, with eyes open and heart quiet, ready to drift, ready to dream, ready to remember. And in that gentle remembering, where dreams begin to stir like fish rising to the surface on a still morning, the few finds new expressions in the quiet lives of those who stay close to the water families, who build their homes on stilts above the slow rise and fall of the tides, passing down not just stories, but sensations the way a certain hush falls when the lights are near the subtle shift in air pressure, the faint scent of ozone mixed with wet earth that signals their presence long before the glow appears. Young mothers rock bobbies to sleep on screened porches, singing the old lullabies in French patois verses that mention the flames deuces the soft flames that watch over good children, but carry away the naughty ones, though the tone is never harsh, only cautionary wrapped in melody, like moss around a branch. And in the schools now, some teachers incorporated gently weaving ecology, with folklore showing how the lights are born from the breath of the marsh, the phosphorus cycling through decay, and rebirth a natural wonder that inspired awe and respect long before science gave it names, and children draw them in crayons, soft blues and greens floating above crayon. Cypress their pictures pinned to bulletin boards as reminders that magic and fact can dance together the way the lights themselves dance over the water, neither fully one nor the other, but something beautifully in between. And on weekends, families pack picnics and head to the levees or the boardwalks through the wildlife refuges where interpreters in khaki vests speak of biodiversity and restoration, while acknowledging with a nod the older names, the older ways. Because to truly protect the land, you must honor all its voices, even the ones that speak in silence, in flicker, in sudden chill, on a warm night. And as the sun sets behind the cypress knees, painting the sky in streaks of rose and gold, the airboats return to their docks' engines, winding down to quiet. And the guides share one last story with lingering visitors of the night. They saw the lights form a perfect circle over an ancient midden shell mound left by the first peoples, a ring of glow that pulsed gently like a heartbeat, as if the land itself were breathing, affirming that yes, this is still sacred, this is still watched, this is still alive. And those who witness it carry the moment home, a quiet glow in the chest that flares on ordinary evenings when city lights feel too harsh, and the pull of the basin whispers through traffic noise, through screen glow, through the rush of daily life, calling back to slower rhythms, to deeper listening. And in dreams, it returns the soft bobbing orbs, leading not astray, but homeward through familiar channels where childhood memories wait submerged, but not lost, rising like bubbles to the surface faces of grandparents long gone, standing on piers waving lanterns that merge with the few, until it's impossible to tell where human light ends, and the swamps begins a seamless continuity that comforts more than any explanation ever could, because in the end, the lights are not about fear, not truly, but about connection, about the thin veil between here and there now. And then, living and ancestral, a luminous thread, stitching generations to the land, to each other, to the vast, patient heartbeat beneath it all. And now, as these threads weave around you soft as spider silk, strong as cypress root, let your own memories surface gently, whatever they may be, faces, places, moments of quiet wonder, and let the few carry them on its glow, blending them into the greater dance, where nothing is ever truly lost, only transformed, decaying, and reborn like the marsh itself, feeding new life from what came before. And in this transformation, there is the deepest peace, the profound release of letting go, sinking into the warm dark water of sleep, not to drown, but to float weightless, held by currents older than sorrow, older than joy, simply being part of the endless flow, where the lights keep their eternal watch, gentle now, always gentle for those who come in stillness, who listen without demand, who allow the night to enfold them completely. And as your breath slows to match the lazy lap of wave against root, let the glow dim to a comforting ember behind closed eyes, lulling you further into the heart of rest, where the swamp cradles every secret, every dream, every wandering soul in its ancient arms, rocking you softly through the quiet hours, until morning light filters golden once more, and the world awakens renewed, ready for whatever gentle mysteries the new day might bring. And as that renewal spreads soft as morning mist over the basin, where the first rays catch on dewdrops hanging from spiderwebs like tiny prisms, scattering light into rainbows too delicate for words, the few lingers in the in-between places, not fully gone with the night, but faded to a memory, a shimmer on the water's surface that might be reflection, or might be something more, watching as the day people stir, fishermen easing their boats into the channels, with thermos coffee steaming in the cool air, and egrets lifting off in slow white arcs, their wings beating the rhythm of another ordinary morning, made extraordinary by the knowledge that beneath it all the ancient breath still rises, still waits, still remembers every hand that has ever dipped into these waters, every voice that has ever called across them in joy or sorrow or quiet communion. And in the small acts of daily life, the lights live on in the way a shrimper pauses before casting his net, murmuring a quick merci to whatever watches, or how a grandmother teaches her grandchild to scatter cornmeal at the water's edge, not out of fear, but out of gratitude for the bounty, the protection, the centuries of guidance wrapped in glow and warning. And in the classrooms now, where children learn about wetland loss and carbon sequestration, they also learn to draw the lights, to imagine them as indicators of health bright, where the marsh thrives dim, where it's wounded a bridge between science and story, that helps the young ones feel the stakes not as abstract numbers, but as something felt in the bones, something their ancestors knew when they poled through the darkness, following or fleeing the soft flames that decided who belonged and who had forgotten how to listen. And in the afternoons, when the sun hangs high and heavy, turning the air to syrup, and cicadas buzz in waves that rise and fall like breathing families gather under shade trees for plate lunches of jambalaya and white beans, passing stories the way they pass the hot sauce, each one adding a pinch of their on the time the light led Papa through the fog after his motor died, the time it hovered over the family cemetery during a funeral, as if paying respects the time it appeared to a lost tourist who stumbled out miles, later wide-eyed and forever changed, speaking little, but carrying a new quiet in his eyes. And these gatherings are the true keeping places, where the few is honored not as spectacle, but as kin, a distant cousin made of light and memory that shows up when needed to remind everyone that the swamp is not backdrop, not resource, not obstacle, but family vast and ancient, and demanding of respect the way all family does. And in the golden hour, when shadows lengthen and the heat begins to ease boaters head homeward, their wakes rippling out in perfect V's that merge with older currents. And sometimes, if you watch closely, you might catch it, a faint disturbance on the water. No boat, no wind, just a soft pulsing glow beneath the surface, moving parallel to the channel, keeping pace, keeping company, keeping the old promise that no one who truly belongs will ever be fully lost. And children wave from docks, calling out, "See you tomorrow," to the herons, the gators, the unseen watchers secure in the knowledge that the night will come again. And with it the possibility of light soft and steady guiding them through whatever dreams the basin chooses to send. And as evening settles, once more the sky bruising to purple, and the first bats flit between the cypress, the cycle begins anew, the slow exhale of the marsh, releasing its breath in faint, cool wisps that carry the scent of night blooming cereus and distant rain. And somewhere out in the channels, a single light rises tentative at first, testing the air, then brighter, steadier, joined by others, until the water is stitched with glowing threads, weaving patterns older than any map. And those who sit on their porches with sweet tea sweating in mason jars feel it, the gentle pull, the invitation to simply be, to let the day slip away like a loose garment and sink into the rhythm that has cradled generations, the slow heartbeat of water and root decay, and rebirth, light and shadow, all balanced, all held in perfect tension by forces that need no name, no explanation, only acknowledgement, only the quiet yes of open eyes and open heart. And in this yes, there is release, the softening of edges, the loosening of grip, the drifting downward into warmth and darkness, where the few becomes part of the blood, part of the breath, part of the vast dreaming that connects every sleeper to every ancestor, to every future child who will one day stand on these same banks and feel the same gentle call and answer in their own way, carrying the light forward, not as burden, but as gift, soft, eternal, luminous, guiding you now deeper, deeper into the most peaceful depths, where worries dissolve like mist in sunrise, and only the glow remains tender and true, holding you safe through the long, sweet night until the cycle turns once more and the basin awakens bright and new and endless in its quiet, ancient welcome. And as that quiet, ancient welcome breathes through the morning, where the sun climbs slow and golden, filtering through veils of moss that sway like curtains in a dream, the few does not vanish entirely, but retreats to the shaded places, the cool hollows beneath overhanging branches where the water stays dark, and still holding its glow in reserve for the turning of the day, when the heat builds and the air thickens and the world slows to the languid pace of the bayou itself. And in this slowing, there is space for reflection, stories to surface, unhurried the way bubbles rise from the mud, carrying fragments of the past up into the light memories of mornings, just like this, when children ran barefoot along the levees chasing dragonflies, while grandparents sat with coffee, thick as mud, recounting the night before, how the lights had danced close to the house, almost playful, circling the blue bottle tree, until the glass caught their glow and sent it scattering in harmless rainbows, and everyone laughed softly because the lights had chosen merriment. Night, a gift to the household that had remembered to leave out a saucer of milk or a bit of pone, bread on the steps, the old courtesies still observed, still answered in kind. And these small exchanges are the true heart of it, the quiet negotiations between people and place, where respect is repaid in safety, in bounty, in the gentle guidance that has steered generations through fog and flood storm. And sorrow the lights, not masters, not monsters, but partners in the long dance of survival, woven so deeply into the rhythm of life that to live here is to live with them, to feel their presence in the hush before a summer rain, in the sudden cool breath on a stifling afternoon, in the way the hair rises on your arms when you step into certain clearings where the ground remembers what was taken or what was given freely. And as the day unfolds lazy and warm with the drone of bees and the distant thump of a frog jumping from lily to lily, the return with their catches, baskets heavy with mudbugs destined for boiling pots spiced red and steaming on newspaper-covered tables, where families gather once more, laughter rising with the steam stories bubbling up alongside the crawfish, the time the light saved uncle from a cottonmouth coiled on the path, the time it led taunt to the perfect stand of palmettos for weaving baskets that sold at the market for good money, the time it simply hovered over the baptismal waters at an outdoor service, glowing soft approval as the preacher dipped the baby and the congregation sang in harmony old hymns in French that carried across the water and seemed to draw more lights in answer, a chorus of glow meeting chorus of voice, until the night felt wholly alive with connection. And these are the tales told in daylight bright and matter of fact, because in the sun the fear recedes, leaving only the wonder, the gratitude, the deep-rooted knowing that the swamp gives as good as it gets tending its people, the way it tends the cypress, and the heron, the alligator, and the iris protecting the balance with a patience that spans centuries. And in the heat of the afternoon, when work eases and hammocks are strung between trees, the elders nap with hats over faces, dreaming dreams, flavored by the light's dreams of walking endless channels with a gentle glow ahead, always ahead, leading not to danger, but to hidden groves where the fishing is unmatched, to lost loves waiting on distant banks, or to the simple peace of floating weightless under stars reflected in black water, and children play quietly nearby, building forts from fallen branches, whispering their own versions of the stories, already learning the language of respect, the gestures that say, we see you, we honor you, we are part of this too. And as the sun dips low again, painting the sky in fire, and the air cools with the promise of evening, the cycle turns seamless, eternal, the basin exhaling once more, releasing its breath in soft rising mists that carry the faint scent of jasmine and decay, renewal and remembrance. And somewhere in the deepening twilight, the first light appears tentative, then sure joined by others, until the water shimmers with their quiet dance, a welcome for the night people, the dreamers, the ones who sit on porches with the lights off, listening to the chorus of frogs and crickets, feeling the old pull, the gentle invitation to let go, to drift, to allow the glow to fill the eyes, the mind, the slowing heart, until the boundaries blur and the self softens, merging with the vast breathing whole, where every story, every ancestor, every future breath is held in perfect suspension luminous, and warm. And as this merging deepens, let it carry you now fully, completely into the waiting arms of sleep, where the few weaves its softest light around your dreams, not guiding, not guarding, but simply being the eternal flicker at the heart of rest, cradling you through the deep, sweet hours where time dissolves and peace flows endless, as the bayou itself holding you tender and safe, until the first pale hint of morning stirs once more, and the ancient welcome begins anew, soft as breath, warm as home eternal, as the light that never truly fades, and as that ancient wheel turns once more with the relentless grace of the river itself, carving its path to the sea. The few remains the quiet constant in the ever-shifting world of the basin, a presence felt in the small, unspoken moments that make up a life lived close to the water, the way a fisherman pauses mid-cast, sensing the subtle shift in the air that means the lights are near, and adjusts his throw, accordingly landing his line in the perfect spot where the bass hide among the roots. Or how a young couple, late-night boat ride, cuts the motor and drifts, in silence watching the glow rise around them, not speaking, because words feel too heavy, too clumsy for the intimacy of the moment, their hands finding each other in the dark fingers, entwining as the lights reflect in their eyes, turning ordinary love into something timeless, something touched by the same breath that has guided lovers and dreamers and wanderers for centuries. And in these moments, the few is not legend, not phenomenon, but living grace, a soft illumination that strips away the noise of the wider world, leaving only the essentials, the beat of two hearts, the lap of water against the hull, the gentle flicker that says you are seen, you are held, you are home. And children growing up with this inherited, without effort, the way they inherit the curl of their hair, or the lilt in their speech, learning to read the lights the way sailors once read the stars, a brighter cluster meaning clear channels, ahead a sudden dimming, signaling hidden, snags a single steady glow over the family dock, promising calm waters and good dreams. And they carry this knowing into adulthood, even when life takes them away to cities with concrete and deadlines, the memory of the glow tucked away like a smooth stone in a pocket, pulled out on sleepless nights to rub between fingers and feel the pull, the call back to slower rhythms, deeper waters, quieter truths. And in the heart of summer, when the days stretch long and languid, and the heat presses down like a heavy quilt, driving everyone to the water's edge for relief, the lights take on a playful aspect, appearing earlier in the twilight hours, bobbing close to the surface, as if inviting the children to chase them from the safety of the pier, their laughter echoing across the bayou as bare feet slap on weathered planks, and parents watch with half smiles, knowing the lights will never lead too far, never cross the line into true danger. For these are the protected ones, the ones who grew up leaving offerings of shiny pennies or wildflowers, who speak to the glow with respect, calling it bon few good fire or tea little light. And the lights answer in kind, weaving closer in harmless spirals that light up young faces with wonder, turning ordinary evenings into memories that will warm entire lifetimes. And later, when the children are tucked into bed with windows cracked to let in the night sounds, the adults linger outside with cold drinks and low voices talking of practical things the price of shrimp, the coming hurricane, season the new levee work, but always circling back to the lights. The way they seemed extra bright, tonight almost festive, as if celebrating something the family can't quite name, a birth, a wedding, a quiet survival through another hard year. And in these conversations, the few is woven deeper into the fabric of belonging, a shared language that needs no translation, binding blood and chosen family alike in the soft glow of mutual understanding. And as the talk winds down and the chairs scrape back and the house lights dim one by one, the basin sighs into full night, the air thick with the hum of life unseen, and the water comes alive with its gentle dance, the lights rising in waves soft, then brighter pulsing in patterns that feel like breathing, like singing, like the slow, steady heartbeat of a place that has seen everything and still chooses tenderness, still chooses to guide, to illuminate, to cradle every weary soul that turns toward it with open hands and quiet heart. And now, as this tenderness wraps around you like the warmest embrace, heavier with each passing breath, let it pull you gently downward into the waiting depths, where the lights dim to a comforting haze behind your eyes, pulsing soft with each slowing exhale, guiding you deeper, deeper into the heart of true rest, where the swamp holds all things in perfect suspension, the stories, the memories, the dreams, the quiet joys, all merging into one vast luminous peace that flows endless and unhurried, cradling you through the long, sweet night, safe and warm, weightless and free, until the first gentle stir of morning comes soft as a whisper wrapped in gold and moss, and the ancient rhythm begins again, eternal, patient, luminous, forever. And as that glow wraps forever around the quiet souls drifting through the basin, where the night air hangs heavy with the perfume of wet earth and distant rain, the few continues its eternal watch, not as a distant spectacle, but as an intimate companion, woven into the very breath of those who call this place home. The way a grandmother's hand rests lightly on a child's shoulder, steadying, guiding without need for words. And in the deepest hours, when the world beyond the levees sleeps restless under city lights, here the darkness is kinder, softer, filled with the soft rustle of leaves and the occasional splash of something sliding into the water. And the lights rise to meet it, all pulsing gentle and sure, like lanterns hung by invisible hands for the benefit of the night. Travelers, the dreamers, the ones who lie awake, listening to the old house settle and feeling the pull of something older calling them to remember that they are never truly alone, never truly lost, as long as the glow finds them worthy of its company. Families asleep in their beds breathe in rhythm with it, the rise and fall of chests, matching the slow bob of orbs over the water, dreams flavored with the soft blue-green haze, where loved ones long gone appear walking the channels with easy strides, pointing out the best fishing spots, or simply sitting on the porch sharing silence that says everything. And in these dreams, the few is the bridge, the connector, the gentle thread that ties the living to the ancestral, the waking to the sleeping, the here to the everywhere, carrying messages of peace, reassurance, continuity across the vast, quiet expanse where time loses its edges and everything flows together in one endless, luminous stream. in the small hours just before dawn when the air cools, and the mist rises thick from the water, blanketing the cypress in soft white veils. The lights dim gradually, not vanishing, but sinking back into the depths to rest among the roots, and the mud recharging on the rich decay that feeds them, the same decay that feeds the irises and the lilies, the garfish and the crawfish, the endless cycle of taking and giving that defines the swamp. And those who wake early for coffee on the feel, the shift, the subtle lightening, dark the promise of another day, wrapped in the same ancient embrace. And they speak softly, if at all, of how bright the lights, or how close they came, almost brushing the house, as if checking and paying respects, ensuring all is well before the sun claims the sky again. And in this quiet exchange between night and day, there is the deepest comfort, the sense of being tended, watched over by forces patient and kind, that ask only for remembrance, respect the small courtesies of a saucer, left out a prayer, whispered a moment of stillness in the rush of life, and children stirring in their beds carry the glow with them into morning dreams, lingering like the taste of sweet cane on the tongue soft, and lingering, warming them from the inside out as they stretch and yawn and pad barefoot to the kitchen, where the smell of biscuits and chicory coffee waits, and the day begins anew, seamless, eternal, the wheel turning slow and sure under the watchful pulse of the light that never truly leaves, only waits patient as the water itself for the next turning, the next breath, the next gentle invitation to drift, to dream, to belong completely to this vast, breathing, luminous whole. And now, as the promise of dawn hovers just beyond the horizon, soft and gold and full of quiet possibility, let that same gentleness settle over you heavier, with each breath pulling you deeper into the warm embrace of sleep, where the few dims to a tender ember behind your eyes, pulsing soft and steady, guiding you through the final gentle currents into the deepest rest, where the swamp cradles every worry, every thought, every wandering fragment, dissolving them into its endless flow, holding you safe, weightless, peaceful through the long, sweet night, and into the soft renewal of morning, wrapped always in the glow that watches, waits, welcomes forever. And as that glow watches, waits, welcomes forever, in the soft turning of days and nights, where the basin breathes in eternal rhythm, the few lingers in the quiet spaces between heartbeats, the pauses, where life feels most alive, most connected, the moments when a fisherman stands alone on his pier at twilight, casting his line into the darkening water, and feels the subtle warmth of a light rising nearby, not close enough to startle, but near enough to comfort, a silent companion, sharing the solitude, acknowledging the long hours, the small triumphs, the quiet sorrows that come with living tide to the water's moods. And in these solitary vigils, the lights reveal their truest nature, not tricksters, not guardians in the dramatic sense, but witnesses gentle and unflinching to every human story played out against the vast backdrop of the swamp, bearing witness without judgment, offering only the soft illumination that says you are part of this, you have always been part of this, your joys and griefs are held here in the mud and the moss, the roots and the slow currents that carry everything eventually to the sea and back again, in rain and mist and renewal. And families know this in their bones, the way They know the taste of their grandmother's roux, or the sound of rain on a tin roof gathering on porches when the sky bruises purple and the air grows electric, with coming storm watching the lights flare brighter in the charged atmosphere dancing wilder, as if excited by the thunders approach weaving through the cypress like threads of living lightning, harmless, beautiful, alive, and children press against screen doors eyes wide, with wonder parents' arms around their shoulders, murmuring, see how they celebrate the rain, see how they welcome the cleansing. And when the first fat drops fall pattering on the leaves, the lights dim softly sinking below the surface to make way for the deluge, the swamp drinking deep, the ancient thirst quenched once more. And in the hush after the storm, when the air is washed clean, and the scent of wet earth rises strong, the lights return gentler than before, hovering low over the flooded sloughs, reflecting in puddles that mirror the stars, a double sky of glow above, and below binding earth and heaven in luminous quiet, and those who venture out barefoot in the cool mud feel it most profoundly, the renewed earth poolsing underfoot, the lights brushing close like curious fireflies, but slower, heavier, with meaning. And they stand there soaked and shining, letting the peace seep in through skin and breath, until the heart slows to match the basin's eternal cadence, and the self expands, fill the vast night, held, cradled, enveloped in something far larger than any single life, any single sorrow. And in the seasons that follow one sliding seamlessly into the next, the few adapts its dance to the changing light in spring, when the irises bloom purple and gold along the banks. The lights take on warmer tones, soft ambers and roses mingling with the dawn mist, as if joining the celebration of new growth, new life, stirring in nest and burrow, egg and seed, and young mothers walking the levees with bobbies bundled against the morning chill, pause to watch, feeling the glow settle over them like a blessing, a promise that this child too will know the swamps, embrace its gentle teachings, its quiet protections. And in summer, when the days burn long and the nights hum with heat, the lights rise higher, cooler blues and greens offering relief in their ethereal drift, a visual whisper of breeze where no wind stirs, and old men fishing from flat boats in the shade nod off, with lines slack in the water, dreaming dreams lit from within by the soft flicker that lulls deeper than any lullaby. And autumn brings the golds and russets the falling leaves that drift lazy on the current, and the lights burn steadier, more contemplative, mirroring the slowing of the year, the drawing inward, the preparation for winter's quiet, and families harvest the last of the peppers and okra, telling stories around kitchen tables of lights seen in childhood brighter than perhaps, or maybe just remembered brighter, because everything was brighter then, when the world was new and full of wonder. And winter comes soft in the bayou, rarely harsh, but always introspective, the water still. Dark the cypress bare, and the lights burn clearest then against the stripped landscape, small, steady flames that warm the cold nights, hovering close to the houses, as if keeping vigil, keeping company through the long dark hours when the wind moans through the reeds and the frogs fall silent, and those awake with worry or illness or simple sleeplessness find comfort in the glow visible from bedroom windows, a soft assurance that the night is not empty, not hostile, but filled with ancient watchful tenderness. And on the long nights, when when the stars hang low and sharp, the lights rise in great quiet processions, slow, moving rivers of glow that trace the old channels, the forgotten paths, the places where ancestors once poled and fished and loved, and grieved their light joining the stars, until sky and water merge in one vast luminous field. And those who watch from blankets on the field, the boundaries dissolve, feel themselves part of that endless field, floating free, held safe in the great breathing hole, where past and present, future and memory swirl together in perfect harmony. And through all the seasons, all the years, the few remains the quiet thread, binding it all, the soft illumination that turns ordinary lives into something sacred, something timeless. The fisherman, the mother, the child, the elder, all touched by the same gentle glow, all carried on the same slow currents toward whatever comes next, knowing deep in the marrow that the swamp does not abandon its own, that the light will be there at the end, as it was at the beginning, soft, steady, welcoming the final drift into deeper waters, where the dance continues, eternal, luminous, peaceful. And as this eternal dance unfolds now around you, closer, softer, warmer, with each breath, let it draw you gently, fully into its rhythm. Let the glow fill every corner of your being, dissolving the last edges of waking thought, melting worry into warmth, tension into release, until you float weightless in the vast, tender embrace, where the lights pulse soft behind your eyes, guiding you deeper, deeper into the sweetest, most profound rest, cradled through the endless night, safe, warm, home at last in the heart of the basin's ancient lullaby, where the few watches waits, welcomes, forever and ever, in perfect, luminous peace. And as the basin's eternal lullaby weaves through the slow-turning seasons, where the water holds every whispered prayer, every fleeting joy, every quiet grief in its dark, patient depths, the few carries its long history forward into the American story, a tale deeply rooted in the soil of this young nation, yet ancient as the Delta itself, born from the mingling of old world fears and new world wonders, carried across the Atlantic by French exiles and Creole dreamers who found in these vast wetlands, mirror of the wild coasts they left behind, and reshaped their folklore to fit the endless horizons, the sudden storms, the bottomless sloughs that swallowed certainty as easily as they swallowed footsteps. And in the early days of the Republic, when Louisiana was newly American bought in a bold stroke of ink and ambition, the lights became part of the frontier narrative, tales told by trappers and traders around campfires on the riverbanks, stories of glowing orbs that led Daniel Boone-like figures through uncharted bayous or lured the greedy speculator to his doom, a moral woven into the fabric of a country, still defining its soul between exploration and exploitation, freedom and folly, and newspapers in New Orleans, and Louis printed accounts alongside ads for steamboat passage, strange lights seen over the guiding flatboats, safely through fog, or chasing deserters from Jackson's army after the Battle of New Orleans, men who fled into the swamp, preferring its uncertainties to the hangman's rope, only to vanish forever, their ghosts, some said adding to the glow that flickered brighter in the war's uneasy aftermath, when the young nation grappled with its contradictions, slavery and liberty, expansion and consequence, all reflected dual nature of the few, benevolent to the humble, cruel to the proud. A democratic spirit of sorts, meting out justice where human law fell short. And as the 19th century unfolded with its cotton empires and canal dreams, the lights attached themselves to the great migrations south, the Germans settling along the ridges, the Italians in the truck, farms the Spanish in the fishing villages, each bringing their own names for will-o'-the-wisp, but adopting the Cajun few as their own, blending it into a shared American mythology that spoke to the immigrant experience, the hope of new beginnings, the peril of the unknown, the thin line between guidance and deception in a land vast and untamed. And during the dark years of the Civil War, when the bayous hid blockade runners, and the lights were whispered to favor the Confederacy, leading Union patrols into ambushes, or Confederate deserters to safety, depending on who told the tale, a partisan glow that shifted with the teller, reflecting the fractured nation's own divided heart. And after Appomattox, as Reconstruction brought carpetbaggers and freedmen's schools, the few grew bolder, brighter, dancing over the ruins of plantations. Old wrongs lingered in the air, thick as humidity, chasing away those who came to profit from others' pain, while guiding the newly free to hidden places of meeting and learning. A quiet resistance woven into the night, and families, black and white, Cajun and Creole, shared versions of the story around separate but parallel fires, the lights becoming a symbol of the land's impartial memory, holding every injustice, every act of courage in its glowing ledger, waiting for the day when balance might be restored. And in the great upheavals that followed the floods, the oil strikes, the world wars, the lights adapted again, appearing to doughboys home on leave, leading them through blackouts, or warning of submarines off the Gulf Coast, a patriotic flicker in a nation at war. And later to civil rights workers in the 1960s, hovering protectively over voter registration drives in remote parishes, a soft illumination for those marching toward a more perfect union, one careful step at a time. And through it all, the few remained quintessentially American, a phenomenon born of science, yet steeped in story, grounded in the democratic mysticism of a people who believed in second chances, hard-won wisdom, the right to pursue happiness, even in the darkest sloughs. And in the modern era, as interstates carved through the wetlands and suburbs pushed closer, the lights became part of the national consciousness, featured in novels and films, songs, and documentaries, a touchstone for the American love of the mysterious, the road less traveled, the ghost story told on family vacations to the bayou, where tourists on airboats chase not danger, but wonder cameras ready for a glimpse of the glow that ties them to something older than the strip malls and smartphones, something that says this land remembers, this land watches, this land still has a voice in the great ongoing story of who we are and who we might yet become. And families from across the country come now, not just to fish or boat, but to listen, to stand levees at twilight and feel the hush fall when the first light rises, a shared American moment of awe that transcends region or background, uniting the descendant of Acadian exiles with the visitor from California or Kansas, in the quiet recognition that some mysteries are worth preserving, some lights worth following with open hearts and careful steps. And in this shared watching, there is healing, a quiet coming together in a nation often divided, the few offering its gentle reminder that beneath the noise and haste there runs a deeper current, a common ground as vast and patient as the basin itself, holding space for every story, every dreamer, every weary traveler seeking rest and renewal. And now, as this deeper current flows around you, soft and steady, warm as a summer night, let it carry you fully, gently into its embrace. Let the glow settle over you like the softest blanket, dimming to a tender pulse behind closed eyes, guiding you deeper, deeper into the heart of peaceful sleep, where the long American history of the few folds into your own dreams, weaving protection, wonder, continuity through the quiet hours, cradling you safe and warm, weightless in the endless luminous flow, until morning comes, soft and new, wrapped in the same ancient, gentle light that has watched over this land and its people since the beginning, and will watch forever in perfect, patient peace. And as this great land's ancient lullaby echoes through the sprawling cities and quiet towns from the misty Appalachians, where similar lights once guided Daniel Boone through fog-shrouded hollows to the wide prairies of the Midwest, where settlers spoke of prairie ghosts flickering over the grasslands, luring, or leading wagon trains across endless seas of grass, the few finds its cousins in every corner of the American experience, a shared national inheritance of mystery that binds the Cajun bayou to the New England moors, where witch lights danced in Puritan tailies, or the desert Southwest, where native peoples told of spirit orbs guiding the lost or punishing the greedy, a luminous thread running through the diverse tapestry of a nation built by wanderers, dreamers, seekers, all following some inner or outer light toward promise or peril. And in the great westward expansion, when railroads snaked across the continent and gold rushes pulled fortunes from the earth, the lights became cautionary tales in dime novels and frontier newspaper stories of miners in California or Colorado following false gleams into treacherous canyons, or being led to safety by benevolent glows, a moral compass for a young country grappling with manifest destiny, the cost of ambition, the thin line between discovery and destruction, and veterans of the Indian Wars or the Spanish-American conflict carried the stories home, blending them with bayou lore in melting pot ports like New Orleans, where soldiers from every state mingled in bars, bordellos trading tales of strange lights seen in Cuban jungles, or Philippine rice paddies that felt kin to the few, a universal reminder that no matter how far the flag flew, the unknown still held sway. The night still whispered its ancient warnings and invitations. And in the roaring 20s, when jazz spilled from speakeasies and flappers danced under electric lights, the few retreated deeper into the wetlands, but never vanished, appearing to bootleggers running whiskey through the channels, glowing soft approval for those who shared a dram with the water, or flaring angry at the greedy who dumped barrels. And the marsh, a quiet enforcer of old codes in a decade mad with new money. And in the Dust Bowl years, when families loaded model and headed west on Route 66, stories traveled with them, tales of Oklahoma jack-o'-lanterns merging with Louisiana few, in California migrant camps, where displaced Cajuns and Arkansans shared coffee and caution around campfires, the lights becoming a symbol of resilience, the glow that guides through hardest times. If you listen, if you respect, if you remember where you came from. And during World War II, when shipyards hummed and women riveted Liberty ships, the lights were said to patrol the Gulf Coast, warning of U-boats or guiding convoys through blackouts, a patriotic shimmer in a nation united against darkness. And after the war in the baby boom suburbs and interstate highways, the few inspired roadside attractions and drive-in movies, ghost stories told on family vacations to the bayou, where dads in station wagons pointed out the glow to wide-eyed kids from Ohio or Illinois, planting seeds of wonder that would bloom into lifelong fascination with the wild, places the mysterious corners of a country increasingly tamed, yet never fully conquered. And in the turbulent 60s and 70s, when protests raged and counterculture sought older wisdom, the lights drew hippies and seekers to the wetlands communes in the basin, where young people sat in circles under the glow, feeling connected to something ancient, something true, a counterpoint to the plastic fantastic, a return to roots real and imagined that helped redefine American identity in a time of questioning, change, rebirth. And through the decades of moon landings and personal computers, civil rights victories, and cultural shifts, the few endured a quiet constant in the national psyche, featured in Hollywood films and television shows, from gentle family adventures to chilling horror, a versatile icon reflecting whatever the era needed: hope or warning, wonder or reflection. And today, in an age of streaming and social media, Americans from coast to coast share videos and stories online, connecting over blurry footage of orbs, dancing over water or fields, uniting red states and blue, urban and rural, in moments of shared other recognition that despite differences, the land still speaks, still glows, still calls to the pioneer spirit, the curious heart, the part of every American that yearns for mystery amid the mundane, for the soft light in the darkness that says, keep going, you're almost home. And families gathered around screens or campfires pass it on the next generation, learning that the few is not just Louisiana's, but America's, a shared heritage of light in the wilderness, guidance through uncertainty, a luminous reminder that this vast, varied nation is bound by more than laws or borders, bound by stories, by wonder, by the gentle flicker that has watched over dreamers since the first feet touched these shores, and will watch over the last long after the cities dim and the wild reclaims its own. And now, as this shared American wonder settles deep within you, warm and steady like a hearth in winter, let it carry you gently, fully into the waiting embrace. Let the soft national glow of countless stories dim to a tender pulse behind your eyes, guiding you deeper, deeper into the heart of profound rest, where the long, luminous history of the few merges with your own dreams, weaving peace, belonging, continuity through the quiet hours, cradling you safe, warm, weightless in the endless flow of this great land's eternal lullaby, holding you tender through the sweet night until morning dawns, soft and new, wrapped in the same ancient, gentle light. has guided generations of American souls forever in perfect, patient peace. And as this luminous reminder echoes through the grand narrative of the American experiment, where dreamers from every shore have chased their own versions of light across prairies and mountains, deserts, and deltas, the view stands as a quiet emblem of the nation's enduring fascination with the unseen, the stories we tell ourselves in the dark, to make sense of the vastness, the hope that something watches, something guides, something forgives in a land built on second chances and fresh starts. And in the post-war boom, when suburbs bloomed and television brought the world into living rooms, the lights inspired episodes of classic shows like The Twilight Zone or Alfred Presents, where ordinary Americans encountered the extraordinary in their own backyards, a glow over a cornfield or a marsh that whispered of deeper truths beneath the Eisenhower calm, a subtle nod to the mysteries that lingered beyond the picket fences and shopping malls. And in the environmental awakening of the 1970s, when Rachel Carson's words, "Nation to the fragility of the wild," the few became a symbol for conservationists rallying to save the wetlands from drainage and pollution, a glowing beacon calling attention to the vanishing bayous, the irreplaceable cradles of life that mirrored the country's own soul wild, untamed essential, and activists from Earth Day onward pointed to the lights as proof of the marsh's living magic, something science could explain, but never fully capture. A call to protect what protects us, the soft glow that has guided fishermen and poets, lovers and loners through centuries of change, reminding a busy nation to slow down, to look up from the hustle and see the quiet wonders that have always been there, waiting patient as the tide for those willing to pause and listen. Through the cultural shifts of the 80s and 90s, when MTV flashed and the internet dawned, connecting distant souls in digital glow, the few found new life in music and literature, songs of working-class dreamers chasing distant lights, or Anne Rice novels, where the supernatural pulsed through New Orleans nights, blending the bayou glow with vampire lore, a romantic Gothic America, where mystery seduced as much as it scared. And in the new millennium, as hurricanes and ravaged the coast, laying bare the fragility, both land and people, the lights were there again, seen by evacuees and rescuers alike, hovering over flooded streets or leading boats through debris-choked channels, a quiet symbol of resilience, the unbreakable spirit of Louisiana, and by extension the nation that rallies in crisis, that rebuilds with stubborn hope, that finds light even in the darkest water. And in the years of division that followed political storms and cultural reckonings, the few offered a neutral ground, a shared wonder that transcended red, blue, urban and rural, a soft glow viewed from airboats by visitors from every state who left with stories to tell back home in Chicago lofts, or Texas ranches, Seattle coffee shops, or Florida beaches, uniting Americans in the simple act of looking out over the water at twilight, feeling the hush fall, watching the first orb rise, and knowing deep down that this quiet mystery is part of what makes the country vast and varied, beautiful and strange, a place where science and story walk hand in hand. Past whispers in the wind, and the future flickers just ahead, always just ahead, inviting the careful, the curious, the open-hearted to follow, not into danger, but into deeper understanding, deeper peace, deeper belonging to the great ongoing story of a nation, forever chasing its own light. Now, as this great ongoing story settles soft and warm around you like a quilt, stitched from countless American dreams, let it carry you gently fully into the waiting embrace. Let the shared glow of generations dim to a tender pulse behind your eyes, guiding you deeper, deeper into the heart of true rest, where the long, luminous history of the few merges with your own quiet journey, weaving peace and wonder through the soft hours, cradling you safe, warm, weightless in the endless flow of this land's eternal lullaby, holding you tender through the sweet night until morning dawns soft and new, wrapped in the same ancient, gentle light that has guided dreamers across this vast republic forever in perfect, patient peace. And as this gentle light has guided dreamers across the vast republic through eras of triumph and trial, from the moonlit marches of civil rights activists in the Deep South, where the glow was said to hover low over rural roads, shielding night marches from harm's watchful eyes, to the quiet reflections of astronauts training in Louisiana's humid wilds, before blasting toward the stars, finding in the few a humble earthly counterpart to the celestial lights. They chased a reminder that wonder begins at home, in the mud and moss, the breath of the marsh, mirroring the breath of exploration that has always defined the American spirit, the drive to look beyond the horizon, whether across a slough or into the void of space. And in the heartland farms, where Midwestern families trace their roots back to Cajun migrations during the oil busts or the Great Depression, the stories crossed state lines, carried in suitcases and memories, blending with local tales of ghost lights over cornfields, or along the Mississippi's banks, creating national folklore quilt stitched from regional threads, but unified in theme: the light that leads the light, that warns the light, that simply is a soft presence in the dark. For a people who have always valued the frontier, the unknown, the promise flickering just ahead. And in literature, from Mark Twain's River Tales, where strange lights danced on the water fooling steamboat pilots, to Stephen King's New England horrors that echo the bayou chill, or John's wanderers chasing distant glimmers of hope, the few archetype pulses through the canon, a literary motif for the American journey, the pursuit of dreams that can illuminate or consume, depending on the purity of the chase. The humility of the heart, and musicians too have carried it forward from the blues born in Delta crossroads, where deals with shadowy figures involved glowing eyes, to the rock anthems of, or the swamp rock of Clearwater revival songs of rivers and darkness, mysterious lights that capture the restless American soul, forever on the move, forever seeking forever, finding moments of grace in the glow, and in times of national reckoning, the aftermath of Vietnam, or 9/11 hurricanes or pandemics, when the country turned inward, searching for meaning, the few resurfaced in quiet ways, a story shared on late-night radio calls, or in online forums, where strangers from Alaska to Florida traded of unexplained lights over water, or fielded a digital campfire, uniting a fractured people in shared mystery, the comfort of knowing that some things endure beyond headlines or hashtags, the ancient breath land rising to meet modern grief with gentle illumination, a soft yes. We are still here, still watching, still holding space for healing renewal, the slow, patient turning toward light and families separated by miles, but connected by screens watched, swamp tour together virtually, or planned pilgrimages to the bayou post-crisis, seeking the glow in person as a kind of national therapy, a return to roots real or adopted in a country of immigrants and migrants, all chasing their own version of the American dream. Light at the end of the tunnel, the city on the hill, the promise over the next rise. And in this seeking, there is unity, the recognition that from the Cajun fisherman pawing his pirogue to the Silicon Valley coder starring at screens, the Wall Street trader, or the Appalachian coal miner, we all follow lights of some kind, inner or outer, natural or manufactured. And the know to choose carefully, to follow with respect, with wonder, with the open-hearted curiosity that built this nation from scattered colonies into a beacon, itself flickering bright against the world's darkness, drawing others toward its glow. And now, as this national beacon flickers soft within you, warm and steady like the hearth of home, no matter how far you've roamed, let it carry you gently, fully into the waiting embrace. Let the shared glow of countless American journeys dim to a tender pulse behind your eyes, guiding you deeper, deeper into the heart of profound rest, where the long, luminous history of the few merges with your own quiet path, weaving peace, belonging continuity through the soft hours, cradling you safe, warm, weightless in the endless flow. This land's eternal lullaby, holding you tender through the sweet night, until morning dawns soft and new, wrapped in the same ancient, gentle light that has guided generations of seekers, dreamers, builders across this vast and varied republic forever in perfect, patient peace. And as this vast and varied republic stretches from sea to shining sea, bound by rivers of dreams and roads of ambition, the few whispers through the collective memory, a soft undercurrent in the American song, from the folk ballads of Woody chasing horizons to the electric anthems of Bob seeing visions in the night, skis the light that flickers just beyond the next bend, has always been there, a companion to the restless, the hopeful, the ones who load up trucks or board trains, or simply step out into the dark, seeking something brighter, something truer. And in the quiet suburbs of the post-war dream, where Levittowns rose neat and uniform, the stories came home with veterans or vacationers' tales, told over backyard barbecues of strange glows over southern waters that felt like kin to the will-o'-the-wisps of European grandparents, or the spirit lights of native ancestors, a blending that mirrored the melting pot itself, turning individual heritages into a shared national mythos, where the few stood for of opportunity, the beacon of freedom, the gentle guide through uncertainty that Lady Liberty herself holds high, a torch passed from ancient marsh breath to modern aspiration. And in the counterculture caravans of the 60s, vans painted psychedelic crossing the country in search of truth, the bayou lights became stops on the map, communes in the wetlands, where young Americans sat under the glow, feeling connected to the earth, to each other, to the long chain of seekers who came before from Puritan visionaries, seeing signs in the wilderness to beat poets on the road, chasing illumination in every form. and the lights welcomed them, hovering close in harmless dance, a soft affirmation that yes, this land still holds magic, still offers guidance to those who approach with open minds and humble hearts. Through the technological revolutions from transistor radios to smartphones, the few adapted once more appearing in viral videos and podcasts, late-night radio shows, where callers from every state shared their own encounters, lights over the Pine Barrens, or the Everglades, the Great Lakes, or the desert playas, a national conversation in the dark uniting truckers, on lonely highways, with insomniacs, in city apartments, in the simple shared wonder of looking up or out and seeing something, unexplained something, beautiful something that says the world is wider than our screens, deeper than our feeds, older than our hurried days. And in moments of national pride, the 4th of July fireworks bursting overhead or Olympic torches carried across the land, the few echoes in the background, a quieter firework, a more personal torch passed from generation to generation, reminding a people forever on the move that home is not just a place, but a glow, a feeling, a gentle pull toward belonging, toward rest, toward the quiet center where all journeys converge and families coast to coast feel it on summer nights, windows open to the breeze, children whispering about fireflies that might be more, grandparents smiling, knowing the old stories still hold power, still soothe, still connect, in a country vast enough to hold every dream and gentle enough in its hidden places to cradle them all. And as the republic matures, grappling with its shadows and its light, the few remains a steady presence, a luminous thread in the flag's fabric, stars, stripes mingling with soft orbs over water, a symbol of the enduring American faith in tomorrow, the belief that no matter how dark the night, a light will rise to meet it, patient, kind, true, guiding not just individuals, but the nation itself toward deeper waters, calmer shores, brighter dawns. And now, as this enduring American faith settles deep within you, warm and steady like the heartbeat of the land itself, let it carry you gently, fully into the waiting embrace. Let the shared glow of a nation's countless journeys dim to a tender pulse behind your eyes, guiding you deeper, deeper into the heart of profound rest, where the long, luminous history of the few merges with your own quiet dreams, weaving peace, belonging, continuity through the soft hours, cradling you safe, warm, weightless in the endless flow of this great republic's eternal lullaby, holding you tender through the sweet night until morning dawns soft and new, wrapped in the same ancient, gentle light that has guided dreamers, builders, seekers across this vast and hopeful land, forever in perfect, patient peace. And as this vast and hopeful land breathes through its cities and fields its mountains and coasts, forever chasing horizons real and imagined, the few pulses quietly at the edges of the American consciousness, a soft counterpoint to the bright lights of progress, the neon of Times Square, the glare of Hollywood, spotlights the endless scroll of screens that illuminate modern nights, yet never quite touch the deeper dark, where mystery still holds sway. And in small towns across the heartland, where Friday night lights blaze, and football fields and families gather under stadium glow, The older lights are remembered in halftime stories, grandparents telling wide-eyed about the glow over distant bayous or local marshes that guided great-grandpa home through a blizzard or warned of floodwaters, rising a thread connecting the roar of the crowd to the hush of the swamp. The shared human need for signs, for guidance, for the gentle reassurance that we are not alone in the vastness, and veterans gathering at VFW halls or around backyard. Fires swap tales that cross eras and theaters of war, lights seen in Vietnamese jungles that felt like home, or desert mirages that danced with familiar rhythm. A universal soldier's comfort, the knowledge that no matter the battlefield, the night holds its own quiet allies, soft flickering friends that ask nothing but respect in return. And in the quiet suburbs, where minivans line driveways and kids bike the cul-de-sacs, the stories come inside on family movie nights, films like Poltergeist or The Princess and the Frog, weaving bayou magic into living rooms from Oregon to Maine, sparking questions that lead to bedtime tales of the good fire, the little light that watches over dreamers, a gentle introduction to the wider world of wonder that waits beyond the glow of. And tablets, a reminder that the American dream has always had room for the unexplained, the poetic, the softly luminous path through uncertainty. And in the great national parks, where millions seek solace among ancient trees and star-drenched skis, rangers share versions of the story around campfire circles, lights seen over Yellowstone geysers or valleys kin to the few uniting hikers from every background in the shared hush of watching embers rise, mirroring the orbs that dance over distant waters, a communal moment of awe that reminds a diverse people of their common inheritance, the wild heart that beats beneath the pavement, the mystery that calls, the edges inviting pause, reflection, reconnection in a country forever building forward, yet forever looking back to the lights that guided the first steps across this continent. And artists and poets continue to draw from it, painters capturing the ethereal glow in watercolors that hang in galleries, from to Savannah musicians sampling the hush of swamp nights in ambient tracks that play in coffee shops, nationwide writers crafting novels where protagonists follow inner few through personal darkness toward redemption or revelation, the light becoming a metaphor for the American resilience, the quiet faith that dawn follows even the longest night, that guidance comes soft and steady to those who slow down enough to see it. And in moments of collective joy, Super Bowl victories, or election nights, 4th of July fireworks, painting the sky, the few echoes in the background, a quieter celebration, a more personal firework blooming over water for those who know where to look, a gentle underscore to the national symphony, reminding revelers that beneath the noise and flash there runs a deeper rhythm, older than any anthem, patient as the rivers that carve the land, shaping us even as we shape it. And now, as this deeper rhythm settles warm and steady within you, like the slow beat of a heart at rest, let it carry you gently, fully into the waiting embrace. Let the shared glow of a nation's endless journeys dim to a tender pulse behind your eyes, guiding you deeper, deeper into the heart of profound rest, where the long, luminous history of the few merges with your own quiet dreams, weaving peace, belonging, continuity, through the soft hours, cradling you safe, warm, weightless, in the endless flow of this great republic's eternal lullaby, holding you tender through the sweet night, until morning dawns soft and new, wrapped in the same ancient, gentle light that has guided generations of American wanderers, dreamers, healers,